Welcome to this episode of Abide in Me, How Jesus Models Secure Attachment with God. This series is a survey of the Gospel of Mark, looking for how Jesus models what is now called secure attachment, which is the physiological, emotional, cognitive, and spiritual experience of what is often called salvation or regeneration or being conjoined with God or enlightenment, individuation, even becoming spiritual. Through the series, we will discover the benefits of becoming securely attached with God, which is the transformation of one's life into one of joy and satisfaction. So we come to the end of the first chapter of the Gospel of Mark, beginning at verse 40. A leper appears before Jesus and asks for healing, and Jesus reaches out and touches him and heals him. You know, as I reflect on the entirety of the Bible, the Hebrew scripture never tells a story of Jehovah reaching out a hand to touch anyone. And Jehovah's invisible. He appears as a fire in a bush, and we hear his voice and so forth. But my conclusion is that people before the incarnation of God in Jesus were not capable of a secure attachment bond with God, right? This is another reason why the incarnation amplifies my awe of God and makes my relationship with God fulfilling. Not only do I have a sense of the mystery of this, that his creative force of love reaches all creation and my own soul in a manner I can't fathom, but yet I have a sense of God touching me, healing my fallen nature, and so saving me from my sin. He even touches my leprosy in order to heal me, as we'll see in a minute. Leprosy, now known as Hansen's disease, Wikipedia tells me, is a long-term bacterial infection that may result in the lack of ability to feel pain, and so loss of parts of extremities due to repeated injuries or infection due to unnoticed wounds. Weakness and poor eyesight come along with Hansen's disease. Now, contrary to the belief at the time, leprosy is not highly contagious, and it is in fact curable. Most of the leper colonies that we've heard about have closed, since leprosy is not very contagious. Now, again, in the New Testament, not only was it thought to be very contagious, it had a stigma about it. And that social stigma has been associated with leprosy for much of history as we know it. And that continues to be a barrier to self-reporting and early treatment, which would result in no harm. Some consider the word leper offensive. Certainly, if untreated, leprosy will progress and cause permanent damage and secondary infections that in turn result in tissue loss, loss of fingers and toes, or deformation as cartilage is absorbed into the body. So it is a really serious illness, and its sores and the deformity, of course, in Jesus' day would have warned people to stay away, and there would have been complete separation of the leper. So it was a desperate, devastating disease to get, and it comes from lack of cleanliness that this bacteria could multiply. Now, I want to believe that Jesus actually knew all of that, right? Even if he didn't have the scientific details. And because he continually touched leprous people, it didn't slow him down a bit. And it made him look very brave and perhaps foolhardy, but completely unconditionally compassionate, right? And so Jesus becomes this model of unconditional love and fearless compassion. We know that his effort was not to physically heal everyone on the planet, because he didn't do that, but to do a spiritual work that would spiritually heal everyone on the planet, which he did do, because that healing continues to this day. So there must be a way in which touching and healing a leper would advance Jesus' attachment bond to the world and to me, and would have reflected his confidence in his relationship with the Father, with the divine within. So here is this complex situation. I could be sick with an ailment I didn't even know I had. I don't know how I got it, but everybody can see it, and it looks repulsive and dangerous, and so people move away from me. In fact, it's easily preventable by cleanliness. It's not contagious, and if people stay close and assist me, I could avoid getting worse off and be healed. But that was not going to happen, right? We would hope that, based on Jesus' model, that Christians would not let that scenario play out, that it would be more common in Christian circles that we would have compassion, that we would reach out and would touch people. But Jesus doesn't make it simple for the leper or for us. In the story, in these verses in the first chapter of the Gospel of Mark, Jesus tells the man to follow all the rules set up in the Hebrew Scriptures to demonstrate his cleanliness once he was healed by Jesus. The Gospel writer includes all the details, repeating the Levitical law. The man is not to give short shrift to the law or to the priesthood set up to enforce that law. My conclusion is that Jesus does not want people to ascribe their healing to some magical use of someone else's power, but to continue to see it as the expression of God's grace and mercy and healing power. But we're told in the gospel, the man went and spread the word, told everybody. Now, that seems to me more likely the behavior. It seems to be a positive evolutionary behavior to make sure that everybody knows that I'm okay, that I'm good, that I will not be cast out of the tribe, that I will not be abandoned, and therefore have better chances of survival. But this story has become, over the ages, externalized to assign responsibility elsewhere rather than expose my shame or fear. I am going to blame somebody else for this disease, and I am going to say that it's up to God to heal it. And I thereby hide my shame or my fear at what I'm going through, if leprosy is a symbol for some spiritual ailment that I have. There's another story in the Gospels that has a man getting in trouble with the priests when he was healed and didn't follow the rules. He didn't show himself to the priestly judges, and he gets in trouble for that. In this case, we're not told what happens. There's no follow-up as to whether the man did it or not. The message I get is that when someone reaches out and touches me, they want to have a relationship with me. They certainly want me to experience healing and complete recovery by their effort. And I may have more work to do to change my thoughts and behavior, but I can take that act of compassion as an effort to be in community, in relationship, and support for my healing. And then my first impulse is going to be share the joy of being healed. Right? I'm going to say, this was a wonderful thing that happened to me. And I will give credit where credit is due as much as I can. So I get what the healed man did. And that makes this whole thing very complex. And because we're not told that Jesus was angry at the man for going out and spreading the news, I mean, how could Jesus ever get angry at something like that, right? I learned that Jesus and his immediate followers knew that the rules now didn't apply. Something had changed. In fact, those rules had been removed. I do not need to rely on some authority to tell me whether I am healed spiritually or not. Now Jesus is saying we are to seek to touch each other spiritually, emotionally, physically. The new order is for love to direct our actions, not some assessment of the other person's disease or unworthiness or failure or disorder. Compassion for each other, coupled with a gratitude for what one has, which protects us, attracts us to each other. This is the only way to overcome what I think and see about my leprous self and what you think and see about my leprous self. Remember, it's some bacteria hidden in my body for a long time, right? It's not really contagious. It can be healed. Whatever spiritual disease I've got, we can touch each other. It's not your responsibility to separate me from my tribe, and I don't need to hide away, even if I'm ashamed of my behavior or my condition. So that's what is coming from what Jesus does from his being securely attached to God, to himself, to people. This new understanding of how humans are attracted to each other, how we seek that attachment all the time, and this understanding of how that effort can be skewed by our wounded sense of self, our hidden wounds that live and fester for years and years. This understanding gives us new rules to live by, that it's not my job to go in and tell you how diseased you are. It's not my expectation that I need to separate myself from you, and it's not called upon me to push you away. I instead am supposed to go out to you and reach out to you and touch you, especially when you cry out to me for help, as this leper did. Now, it's still scary to break these old rules. For my professional career, I was a teacher, right? I was a preacher, and I don't have that role anymore. I don't see it the same way anymore. But back in the day, I saw it as my telling you what the truth was, and that you would then be listening to me. And that's what my role was, how I could help you, what I was supposed to do for you. And that was my living up to what God was calling me to do. Now I see it that my role is to be a model of loving you, of loving myself, and of loving God, right? And I have to let go of the role of telling you whether you're good or bad, because that's what it in effect became. So we don't know what will happen, right? We don't know how healing happens. It's a wonderful, miraculous process that happens again and again, right? We're not in charge of it. And I'm going to continue to be caught by the thought that the world's going to go to hell in a handbasket if I don't step up and tell people what's right and wrong, if I don't be in charge, if I don't make sure that all the ancient rules continue in place. That's going to still come up for me. And Jesus' model is such a wonderful release and a relief. I am free to love you and have compassion for you without condition. So Jesus is challenging us with this really radical behavior. He touches lepers and he doesn't shame them. He doesn't shame anyone. Even when they don't do what, as we're told in this story, he sternly tells the leper to go follow the rules and don't tell anybody, right? I suggest he is modeling a secure attachment behavior, which does not rely on other people doing what he says, but instead seeks to be in relationship with other people, knowing that in that relationship, I am healed and the other person is healed. And I'm encouraged that I can safely model my life after what Jesus is showing me here, because I won't even get leprosy. I pray this has supported your transformative life, whatever practice you have in your life. I want to thank Solomon Keel for his music, and I want to invite you to make a contribution to this work if you wish and are able through the PayPal link. And I invite you to continue to listen to the next episode. You be well.